that really had relationships at its core and required us to think quite differently. The first is globalization, that's required us to interact with cultures and with, indeed, markets. And the second is science, which really has started to locate the scientist in relationship to what he's studying. And finally, brain science has started to come up with new discoveries that point to the brain as being a social organ that actually changes in relationship to others. So, in order to discuss this today, we turn to a profession that is really riding the crest of this wave. It's using the momentum from a number of different paradigms and new bodies of knowledge to gain some power. It's assessing the theoretical and practical currents of today so they can stay ahead of the curve and really be relevant to tomorrow. And this is coaching. So in the studio with us today, we have Yoli, who is a research coaching psychologist who's written a number of books on group relationships. We have V, who runs her practice, focusing very specifically on reflective techniques. Sylvia, to my right, who's the CEO of Amabubhesi Group Holdings. Welcome. And Tony, who's a neuroscientist. Welcome, everyone. Sylvia, in fact, has an actual story to share with us about diversity in relationships, and it gives us a fantastic context and foundation for us to start discussions today.
Thank you, Alison. Our executive team has really gone through hell, through the recession in the last 5 years. We run out of ideas, and I lost it with the team. I continuously blamed them for being disconnected from each other and from the customer. I accused them of losing creativity, of failing to speak up when necessary. In reality, our team is truly diverse. We have people of different nationalities and ethnic groups. We have some women and a lot of men. And what happened was that at times our different personality traits and cultures had unintended consequences. For example, Simpiwe, who is our most highly qualified member of the team, never made eye contact with the men particularly. And we automatically interpreted her modesty as being lack of confidence and competence, and we just discarded all her ideas. And this is really not good for relationships or for creativity.
Quite a situation. Thanks for sharing with us, Sylvia. Yoli, I'm wondering what research and psychology has to tell us about relationships and diversity, and particularly when relationships can go wrong.
Thank you, Alison. Diversity is about respect and acceptance. It's about understanding that each individual is unique and that we need to recognize individual differences. This could be along race, gender, ethnicity, and etc. In Sylvia's experience, I think that leadership and the organization did not embrace the diverse nature of the team, as well as failed to appreciate the positives of each team member that they were bringing on board. Simpiwe, for instance, was ignored simply for not making eye contact, which could be a cultural practice, really. There is also possible discrimination and prejudice in relation to the case study. Both practices are deeply embedded in individual and societal levels, according to Dr. Barker, and they are about exclusion and ill treatment of people and groups as a whole. These two practices can have a detrimental effect in the workplace and in society generally.
You mentioned something very interesting with the word embedded, and I'm wondering to what degree upbringing can actually change your brain and create a hardwiring for beliefs like prejudice. So I'm wondering, Tony, what does brain science have to tell us about diversity and relationships?
Thanks, Alison. As we know, there's been a lot of research and development in this area. The old way of thinking was that the brain produced mind. Now we understand that the brain enables relationships, and those relationships create the mind, and the mind then changes the brain. Furthermore, the brain experiences and remembers implicitly and explicitly. And by implicit memory, we refer to memory that's non-declarative, non-conscious, emotional, and procedural. On the other hand, explicit memory is conscious, can be verbalized, and is contextual. If we refer back to Sylvia's story around the prejudices in a diversified group, we need to understand that family upbringing, the communities that we grow in, are all experiences that influence our belief system, influencing and impacting on our behavior and our brain development. So in developing the brain, in integrating the left and the right brain, conscious and unconscious memory really opens up a lot of new possibilities.
Can you perhaps share with us an example of integration?
Oh yes. Looking at your opening remarks around this show, Ali, you referred to coaching as riding a profession that's riding the crest of the wave, or rather seeks to be ahead of the curve. What you've done there, you've used some powerful metaphors in creating image, creativity, which is the right brain, logic, language and reasoning, left brain, to really deliver a powerful, impactful, and complete message without having to explain it in detail.
Tony, I'm fascinated by your use of the concept of metaphor. One of my peers suggested that the team and myself go for coaching, and one of the first things that the coach actually did was to ask me how I saw my team, and I very quickly saw them as a fruit salad or maybe a fruit cake, because every individual there was jockeying for power, and it was really very difficult for the whole team. She then said to me, think about how you would visualize or look at your team into the future, and I thought about it, and I thought, I'd rather see them more like a fruit sundae with all the tastes comfortably blended into one tasty recipe with creativity and innovation as a cherry on top. But what I really need to say is that the process really sparked in me a whole new awareness for change.
Oh yes, in our brain, Sylvia, we've got hundreds, billions of connections, and we strengthen those connections that are useful to us, and we prune or lose those are not useful to us.
That is fascinating. I've had a favorite quote for a while that says, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And that I didn't realize it had an actual neuroscientific basis to it. So it's almost like, and here's another metaphor, like a torch beam, that whatever you shine at, it becomes stronger and more visible, and whatever lies in the darkness obviously becomes weaker and invisible. So that seems a good point to turn to B, and I'm wondering, B, how does what you've learned in your practice help us to understand paying attention to your attention and reflective techniques?
Thank you, Alison. I must start by saying I'm not surprised by Sylvia's experiences, because we all have fears. Some are conscious and some are unconscious. We can identify these fears by using reflective thinking. Reflective thinking is the ability to reflect on our own attitudes, values, and behaviors. It allows us to focus on our own thought processes. In the context of diversity, we can use it in a way where we become mindful of others, thus changing our attitudes towards others. Not that we'll be able to eliminate all our biases, but we will become more aware of what mind is doing, and we can consciously eliminate unintentional bias. Sylvia also commented that the team members were losing their creativity. It's clear that reflective thinking is a major thinking skill required in that creativity. And our fears block that creativity, like in the case of Simpiwe. We fear the unknown. Hence, we have an indifference to different cultures. But when we change how we think, we can change how we act. It's about two things. Firstly, being willing, and then being able to evaluate our own thinking. And I often see with my own clients, those who apply reflection and mindfulness see things differently, thus learning more quickly and problem solving more creatively.
What you're telling us is really very reaffirming, because through our coaching interventions we started learning about thinking about our own thinking, and in the process we gained a new awareness of our fear of diversity and of the triggers that froze our thinking, and how I, as the leader, was inhibiting the creativity of our team. In the process, we didn't just reflect as individuals, but by engaging in a group reflective process, we actually started singing off the same hymn sheet.
It's great that you describe it that way, Sylvia, as a kind of a group reflection process. Actually, in coaching, we use the concept of attuned relationships. A starting step in building relationships and creating a sense of belonging is acknowledging that everyone is necessary. Also, understanding the differences of people within a group and appreciating what the efforts of the people that they are bringing in. For attuned relationships to occur, people should be able to define themselves within a group that is inclusively and outside the group as individuals, which is exclusively.
It's almost literally attuning oneself. It's almost like everybody has their own instrument and they play that well. But you don't have to play someone else's instrument to create an in-tune experience that actually sounds bigger and better and more complex once played together.
Well, we physically have mirror neurons that fire a response or can fire a response to someone else's experience.
Wow, that's amazing, Tony. I have observed the process and what connected relationships look like for years, but did not actually know that there was a physical connection with people. You know, Sylvia, as a leader, you may relate to the term we currently use in coaching that refers to a leader who is able to lead in a connected manner where his or her followers are at resonant leadership.
And that's almost like the conductor of that symphony, who doesn't actually play any of the instruments in front of him or her, but because they're able to experience what everybody in the orchestra is experiencing, they can create the effect of a bigger, better, and in-tune symphony.
I'd say, indeed, resonant is how things are starting to feel. Our executive meetings have now become creative spaces as an extension of our social relationships and what we've learned to create. We've created a safe environment where people of diverse backgrounds can express their different points of view. And as such, they are energized and they're motivated by the change that they can actually make. So yes, I think that resonant captures it very, very well, and it's almost as if we have literally changed our minds.
Wow, Sylvia, by changing your mind, you know that you've actually changed your brain.
Thank you, everybody, for your input today. And I think what I'm getting from everyone is that relationships are incredibly important. And as the world becomes flatter and we're having to engage in diversity, we need this new advanced understanding of relationships to manage that diversity. And these are relationships not only between different parts of the brain, but also how we relate to our own brains, and then, of course, how we relate to other people. And in leveraging that diversity and in the process actually changing our minds and changing our brains. So from mind changing to changing the weather. Join us next week to talk about climate control issues and how we need to adjust our thinking to be more relevant to tomorrow.